Today we're reading from Deuteronomy 8, reading from verses 7 to 18. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land of brooks, pools, gushing springs, valleys, and hills. It is a land of wheat and barley, of grapevines, fig trees, pomegranates, olives, and honey. It is a land where food is plentiful and nothing is lacking. It is a land where iron is as common as stone, and copper is abundant in the hills. When you have eaten your fill, bless the Lord your God for the good land he has given you. But that's the time to be careful. Beware that in your plenty you don't forget the Lord your God and begin to disobey him. For when you have become full and prosperous and have built the fine homes you live in, and when your flocks and herds have become very large, and your silver and gold have multiplied, that is the time to watch out that you don't become proud and forget the Lord your God who brought you out of your slavery in the land of Egypt. Beware that you don't forget the God who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with the dangerous snakes and scorpions, where it was so hot and dry. He gave you water from the rock. He fed you with manna in the wilderness. It was a kind of bread unknown before, so that you would become humble, and so that your trust in him would grow, and he could do you good. He did it so that you would never feel that it was your own power and might that made you wealthy. Always remember that it is the Lord your God who gives you power to become rich, and he does it to fulfill his promise to your ancestors. The word of God.
So it's Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. So, is it Thanksgiving or is it Harvest Thanksgiving? I'm always confused by this. Because when I was a kid, it was different. There was two different things. My parents were English, though, so that explains a lot. But it was two different things. And you can see why it would be two different things for them, because Thanksgiving as a holiday really only exists in North America. There's a few other places that have Thanksgiving as a holiday where its purpose is primarily about harvest. But it's really just the US and Canada that do it. England and Germany both have harvest festivals, but they're a season, which actually makes a lot of sense since harvest is a season. So they go through pretty much all of September and October, although in Germany, Oktoberfest, of course, is more important. But we're really the only ones who celebrate a holiday called Thanksgiving, where we sit around and eat a huge meal and watch sports. And when you think about it, that's interesting. Well, actually, that's not true. The Philippines, Japan, and there's somewhere else that has holiday Thanksgiving. But they're primarily places that's due to their contact with the US, where they have this holiday. And when you think about that, that's actually not surprising, because we're pretty much the part of the world that has the most abundance of everything. What does that tell you? I know, you want to say it makes us extra thankful, but not always. It makes us perhaps sometimes a little extra complacent. But that's a topic for another time, specifically next week. But the thing about Thanksgiving is that we've changed it a little bit, though. It's no longer just about harvest. It's about all the things that we're thankful for. So if you were to all write farmers on your leaf, that would be great. But it's also okay if you write something else that you're thankful for, because that's what Thanksgiving is all about. It's what we're thankful for. I personally am I want to say right up front, Harvest Thanksgiving, I am very thankful for farmers, because they do a very important thing that I can't do. They farm. I have a black thumb, so anything I touch dies. But I'm grateful that they grow stuff. I am even grateful for those who grow beets, because surely some of you probably eat that. I don't know why, but some of you do. And Brussels sprouts. But anyway, I'm grateful for farmers because they do such an important thing. They feed us. They do. And if you think of many of the other things that are related to, like whether you work in oil and gas or in forestry or any of those other things, very important things that are very necessary to how we live. In fact, you don't want to stop the list there because it gets longer. And we should be very thankful for people that do those things, that do those jobs. The thing about that, though, is they don't do it by themselves, do they? If you're a farmer, you know you need something other than just you to make that crop grow. You actually need land. You need seed. You need sun and rain. You need equipment. You need also, not to mention they're thankful for people who make that equipment. You need all of those things. You don't do it by yourself, do you? And if you keep thinking about that, think about all of the things that we do. There's not really any that we do by ourselves, is there? All of the things for which we should be thankful come to us not just by our own hands, but by our interaction with other people, our relationship with other people. So the last few weeks, we've been hearing from the book of Exodus, and in fact, we just take a massive leap because what we heard was how the Israelites left slavery in Egypt, how they were saved at the Red Sea because God parted the sea for them to go through. We heard about how they were hungry and food was provided for them. We heard about how they were thirsty and water was provided for them. And now they're about to enter the promised land. We missed a chunk. We missed the whole how they got the Ten Commandments, the story of how they made it through that 40 years. We missed a big chunk. So please feel free to go back and read that. But here we are. The book of Deuteronomy is Moses talking to the Israelites before they enter the promised land. Moses, of course, famously does not enter the promised land with them because that's Moses' punishment, what a horrible word, for having killed an Egyptian. The story of that's how Moses is revealed, is that he kills an Egyptian who is beating a slave in order to protect the slave. So God says Moses doesn't get to enter the promised land. So here they are, and here's Moses talking to them about the promised land, and he describes the promised land to them, and it's awesome, it's wonderful, it's beautiful. It's like Alberta. There's plenty of everything. It turns out it's not exactly like that, but in any case, it is in terms of it being a metaphor for freedom, isn't it? It's a wonderful place. And they're about to enter it. And Moses says, hang on a second. Before you do, you'll have lots to be thankful for, but you need to remember a couple of things. Remember, first of all, where you came from. Remember the experiences of the last 40 years. Remember that. Remember how you were, for generations, you were slaves. And then we spent all this time together wandering around the wilderness, learning how to not be that. Learning instead how to be who we are. Learning instead how to work with each other, how to be a community, how to be in relationship with each other. That was the point of that wandering. That's the point of the Ten Commandments. They're not orders that you need to follow. They're instructions about how to live well together. And when we do that, we live well together. So don't forget all that stuff. Because you're going to want to. Because in the wilderness, it's really easy to remember all that stuff. But suddenly when you're faced with all of this great plenty and abundance of cool stuff, with success, we're in the promised land. When you're faced with that, it's harder to remember those things, isn't it? It's much easier to remember that it's important to live together when we don't have so much stuff. I was just making my point. It's important to remember when suddenly we're faced with all of this great stuff that we can do, that when we're suddenly, we've got all this stuff that we can make, that we can collect, that we can just enjoy. Don't forget that you still have to live with all these other people. And don't forget that stuff doesn't come to you just for you or by you, but because you work with other people to do it. And most importantly, don't forget that when you harvest from the land is part of doing that. You're in relationship not just with people, but you're in relationship with the rest of creation. You're in relationship with the land, with the sky, with water, with all of that. We are part of the fabric of creation. And so remember what you learned about being in relationship. Hang on, though, because you need to remember something else. When you were in the wilderness and you faced all of those terrible obstacles to coming to your freedom, when you faced being hungry, when you faced being thirsty, when you faced enemies in the wilderness, God was there too. Don't forget that God was there, and God is here. Because all of those things are intimately connected. Whatever language you use, God is part of that relationship. Whether you think of God as being a love or the thing that connects us, the energy, the higher power, whatever language you use around that, God is part of that. So we're in relationship not just with each other, we're in relationship with all of creation, and what brings that relationship is God. So when you go into this land, this promised land, this land of plenty, this land of abundance, remember that it's not just about you, it's about those that you're in relationship with. It's about God. It's about remembering that, and again, perhaps a topic for another time, but the promised land was occupied by someone else. So how are you going to handle that? Well, if you've read ahead, it turns out what God says to the Israelites is go and kill everybody and take their land. So let me ask you this question. First of all, would a God of love really do that? Would a God of love and creation, a God that builds and creates and grows things, tell you to do that? So maybe there's a couple of explanations there. One is, of course, famously, well, the Bible was actually written by human beings, so they would tell the story their way. There's also actually a way of understanding that to think that perhaps God was simply testing the Israelites again, because he has all along. Perhaps he was testing the Israelites to see if they really did learn a lesson. And it turns out, as it happens, they did. They didn't go into Canaan and kill everybody at all. Oh, there were lots of battles. And oh, they wanted to, of course there was. But they didn't just indiscriminately wipe out everybody and take their land. And yet, historically, the lesson we learned was it's absolutely okay to do that. So, go back to Moses talking to the Israelites about the promised land and about relationship and about how we are not on our own. Because it's not just about the relationship we have with the people that are our friends, it's about the relationship that we have with the people who aren't. Will we make them our friends, or will we conquer them? Please answer with the first one. Because that's the point of Moses saying that it's about relationship. We build and we grow with relationship. Not just, and we'll of course hear it again from Jesus, not just with those that are your friends, but with those that are your enemies. If they're your friends, they're not your enemies any longer. So why not go and make friends with them? Thanksgiving shouldn't be just this one moment. There absolutely should be a moment to be thankful for the harvest and for farmers. But it shouldn't just be this one moment. It's like saying Christmas is one day. Is it? If the story of Christmas is about God's love coming to us all, doesn't that happen every day? Are you thankful every day? You should be. We struggle with that, and sometimes we're not, but we should be thankful every day because there is something to be thankful for every day. So let's not just have one day of thankfulness. Let's not even just have a season. Let's have an everyday thankfulness. Find something every day. Be thankful always, and find something every day. It shouldn't be as hard as it is. But it is. Because as human beings, we have a tendency to focus on the things that are damaging and hurtful to us. Think of all of the things that are happening in the world right now. Think of all of the ways in which we're hurting each other in the world right now. And those tend to take over. But what about the things we're thankful for? What about the things we should be thankful for, that we ought to be thankful for? That shouldn't be just one day. It should be every day. To have a moment of thankfulness, at least a moment of thankfulness every day. When I was talking with the kids about the connection between thankfulness and joy, that's the thing about thankfulness. It doesn't have to give you a moment of excitement and happiness. It can give you a moment of comfort, safety, a feeling of, a positive feeling of strength. Be thankful every day. There is something to be thankful for every day. Be thankful. Please.